She thought a few carefully chosen words could get a black man kicked out of first class, until he calmly reached into his pocket and flashed his FBI badge. Madeline Brooks strutted through Pine Haven International Airport, her designer carry-on gliding effortlessly behind her across the polished floors. For nearly 2 decades, she had flown this exact route, Pine Haven to Westfield, always in first class, always expecting the same level of comfort and exclusivity that her money and status guaranteed. Everything about air travel felt predictable to Madeline. The early boarding, the complimentary champagne, the soft hum of professionals murmuring about mergers and market trends. First class was her world, a world where people like her belonged and where others simply didn't. Today was supposed to be no different. But when she reached row 2, her usual spot by the window, she stopped cold. Sitting there, already settled in the aisle seat beside hers, was a black man dressed in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit. His posture was relaxed, his eyes scanning the screen of a sleek laptop as his fingers flew across the keyboard. He looked important. Madeline's lips pressed into a thin line. She hadn't come this far, paid this much, and earned this lifestyle just to share it with someone who didn't belong. At least, not in her mind. The man didn't glance up. He was absorbed, the soft glow of his screen reflecting off his dark skin, highlighting the sharp angles of his jaw. He had the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly where he was supposed to be. Madeline didn't like that. With a little too much force, she placed her designer tote into the overhead bin and sank into her seat, stiff-backed and silent. Her purse accidentally bumped his armrest. No reaction. She cleared her throat, shifting dramatically. Still nothing. Her patience was wearing thin. Leaning just close enough to invade his space, she forced a polite, sugary, sweet tone. "Excuse me, are you sure you were in the right seat?" Without glancing up, the man replied in a calm, measured voice, "Yes." That was it. No elaboration, no apology, no acknowledgement of her presence. Madeline's cheeks flushed. She darted a glance toward the front, spotting Vanessa Reynolds, the flight's lead attendant. In her early 30s, Vanessa had been assisting another passenger, but the moment Madeline raised her hand, Vanessa approached with a professional smile. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" "Oh," Madeline chuckled awkwardly, "I think there's been a little mix-up. I believe this gentleman is in the wrong seat." Vanessa's eyes flicked toward the man. For the first time, he paused his typing and looked up. His expression was unreadable. No surprise, no confusion, just calm. Vanessa consulted her tablet. "Actually, ma'am, Mr. Reynolds is exactly where he's supposed to be. You're in 2A. He's in 2B. Madeline blinked, her fingers clenched around the armrest. "That's odd," she murmured, forcing a smile. "I just assumed." Vanessa's polite smile tightened. "Everything is correct, ma'am." But Madeline wasn't done, not even close. Vanessa Reynolds pulled out the passenger manifest from her sleek tablet, fingers gliding expertly across the screen. The tension was palpable, but her voice remained calm and professional. "Actually, ma'am, Mr. Reynolds is exactly where he's supposed to be. Your ticket is 2A, and he's in 2B. Madeline Brooks blinked rapidly, the smile on her face faltering just enough to reveal the storm brewing beneath her polished exterior. Her manicured fingers curled around the edge of her armrest, knuckles whitening. "That's odd," she finally managed, forcing a hollow laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Are you sure? Well, I just assumed." Vanessa's polite smile tightened, but there was a knowing glint in her eye now. She'd dealt with women like Madeline before. "I'm sure, ma'am. Everything looks correct." For a split second, Madeline's face twitched. Her carefully controlled expression wavered, but she quickly recovered, smoothing her lips into a tight, forced smile. "Well, I suppose mistakes happen." She exhaled sharply and turned toward the window. But she wasn't done, not even close. Meanwhile, Marcus Reynolds had already returned to his work, his calm demeanor unshaken. He didn't even spare Madeline a glance as he resumed typing, the faint sound of the keyboard clicking quietly between them. Vanessa lingered for a moment, sensing the tension still radiating off Madeline. But when Marcus gave her a subtle nod of reassurance, she stepped away. Madeline sat stiffly, arms crossed over her chest as her mind raced. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had flown first class for decades, and never, not once, had she found herself sitting beside someone like him. It didn't matter that Marcus wasn't doing anything wrong. It didn't matter that he wasn't speaking, wasn't bothering her, wasn't even acknowledging her presence. To Madeline, the sheer fact that he was there, that he belonged in this space, was enough to gnaw at her. Her breath came faster, shallow and uneven. Her irritation bubbled just beneath the surface, threatening to spill over. There was no way she could just sit there and accept this. With a quick glance toward the flight crew, she made her decision. Her finger jabbed the call button above her head. A soft chime echoed through the cabin. Within moments, Vanessa returned, her professional smile in place. "Is there something I can help you with, ma'am?" Madeline kept her voice low, careful, measured. "I'd like to request a seat change." Vanessa blinked, momentarily surprised. Oh, are you uncomfortable? Is there an issue with the seat itself?" For half a second, Madeline hesitated. She couldn't just say what she was really thinking. Not aloud, instead she leaned in slightly, lowering her voice even further. I don't feel comfortable sitting here." The words came out slow, deliberate, coated in fake politeness. Vanessa's smile faltered. "I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am. If there's a technical issue with the seat, I'd be happy to—" "No," Madeline interrupted sharply. "It's not the seat." Vanessa's eyes flicked briefly toward Marcus, then back to Madeline. The message was clear, even unspoken. I'd really prefer to sit somewhere else," Madeline added, clasping her hands in her lap, pretending to be the picture of calm. Vanessa inhaled slowly. "Let me check for any available seats, ma'am. Just a moment." Madeline nodded stiffly, her eyes fixed forward as Vanessa walked a few steps away and tapped rapidly on her tablet. The tension in the cabin was building, subtle but unmistakable. A few nearby passengers shifted, ears perked, pretending not to eavesdrop, but absolutely listening. Vanessa returned after a minute. "I'm afraid we're at full capacity today, ma'am. There aren't any other open seats in first class." Madeline's jaw clenched. "What about coach?" she asked, the word tasting bitter on her tongue. Vanessa hesitated, keeping her tone even. "There may be a few open seats in economy, but—" Madeline sat up straighter. "Perfect. He can take one of them." The words fell like a stone in the silence of the cabin. Vanessa blinked, momentarily thrown off. "I'm sorry, you want Mr. Reynolds to move to economy?" "Yes," Madeline said firmly, her voice sharp. "I think that's best. It would solve this little situation." Across the aisle, a man in a navy blazer, Henry Crawford, shifted in his seat, letting out a quiet scoff. Others began exchanging glances, the mood in the cabin changing rapidly. Vanessa drew in a slow breath, carefully folding her hands in front of her. "Ma'am, just to clarify, you're asking me to move a paying first-class passenger to coach because you're uncomfortable?" Madeline nodded once, her expression tight. "Exactly." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "I'm afraid that won't be happening, ma'am." Madeline's eyes snapped up. "Excuse me?" "Mr. Reynolds has a first-class ticket just like you. He is in his assigned seat. I cannot and will not ask him to move." A low murmur swept through the cabin. Natalie Parker, a young woman a few rows back, lifted her phone slightly, pretending to text, but her camera was already rolling. Madeline's face flushed deep red. "This is ridiculous," she hissed. "I am simply asking for the same courtesy anyone else would get if they felt uncomfortable." Vanessa didn't budge. Ma'am, with all due respect, you are not making a simple request. You're asking me to remove a paying customer from his rightful seat for no valid reason. That's not an accommodation. That's discrimination. The words hung in the air, sharp as a knife. Marcus hadn't said a word. He sat still, laptop closed, his gaze locked on Madeline with quiet intensity. Vanessa's voice lowered, but her tone was firm. Ma'am, we're preparing for taxi. If you cannot remain seated and follow crew instructions, I will have to ask you to deplane. Madeline's stomach dropped. What? She gasped. You have two options, Vanessa continued. Stay in your seat quietly or deplane. But Mr. Reynolds is not moving. The tension snapped. A handful of passengers applauded softly. Henry Crawford smirked, shaking his head. Madeline's breath came fast. This was not how it was supposed to go. She had expected understanding, support, not this. Before she could open her mouth to argue, Marcus reached calmly into his pocket. The movement was slow, deliberate. When he pulled out his leather badge case and flipped it open, the gold FBI badge gleamed under the cabin lights. Gasps erupted around the cabin. Natalie zoomed in instantly. Marcus's voice was calm, almost bored. Ma'am, would you like to file an official complaint? I can take your statement in right now. Madeline froze. Her world, so carefully constructed, began to collapse around her. And for the first time, she realized she had messed with the wrong man. Madeline exhaled sharply, her eyes narrowing. I just prefer to sit elsewhere, she forced out, her voice carefully controlled, though the venom beneath was impossible to miss. Vanessa Reynolds glanced toward Marcus Reynolds, who had paused his typing once again. He still hadn't spoken a word, but he was listening. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, his jaw tight as if holding back everything he could have said, but chose not to. Let me check if there are any available seats, Vanessa offered, her tone polite but clipped. She tapped quickly on her tablet. Madeline sat back, lips pressed into a firm line. Marcus didn't react. He didn't argue, didn't turn to ask why she was uncomfortable. He didn't even look at her, and somehow, that made it worse. He was supposed to be flustered. He was supposed to know his place. Instead, he just ignored her. A few rows ahead, Henry Crawford, the businessman in the navy blazer, turned his head slightly, pretending to check his phone. But he was listening. Across the aisle, a woman nudged her husband and whispered something under her breath. People were noticing. Vanessa's fingers tapped swiftly on the tablet, eyes scanning. After a moment, she looked up. I'm afraid we're at full capacity today, ma'am. There aren't any available seats in first class. Madeline's stomach clenched. She could feel heat rising in her chest. Vanessa added, Would you like me to check in economy? There might be a seat available there. Madeline stiffened, face burning. Economy. The word itself felt like an insult. As if I would ever, she snapped, then caught herself. Her voice caught in her throat. That's not going to work. Vanessa's polite smile didn't falter. In that case, ma'am, I hope you don't mind staying in your assigned seat. Madeline forced a thin-lipped smile. I suppose I have no choice. Let me know if you need anything else, Vanessa offered, then turned and walked away. But Madeline barely heard her. Her ears were ringing, her vision blurred slightly around the edges. Marcus? He calmly turned back to his laptop, typing again as if none of it had happened. That was it? That was his response? Just pretend she didn't exist? Madeline's fingers curled into fists. No, this wasn't over. With a sharp exhale, she pressed the call button again. This time, Vanessa hesitated before making her way back. Ma'am? Madeline straightened her back, raising her chin. I need to speak to someone in charge. Vanessa blinked slowly, maintaining her professionalism. Ma'am, I'm the lead flight attendant on this flight. Is there something I can clarify for you? Madeline's voice sharpened. No, I mean someone higher, the head crew member, or the pilot. A low murmur rippled through the cabin. Someone let out a quiet chuckle. Vanessa's jaw tightened, but she kept her face neutral. Ma'am, the pilot is preparing for takeoff and won't be available, but I'm happy to assist you with anything you need. Madeline pursed her lips. Her jaw clenched so tightly her teeth ached. And still, Marcus didn't flinch. He wasn't nervous. He didn't fidget. If anything, it felt like he had done this dance before, seen it all, heard it all. She took a breath and lowered her voice, leaning in. This was her last card. I don't feel safe. The words dropped like a bomb. Vanessa's smile disappeared instantly. Her posture stiffened. Marcus stopped typing, his fingers frozen above the keyboard. Across the aisle, Henry muttered under his breath, "Here we go again." Vanessa took a slow, steady breath, straightening to her full height. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but can you clarify what you mean?" Madeline folded her hands neatly in her lap, tilting her head just slightly, the perfect picture of fake politeness. I don't feel comfortable." The unspoken accusation hung heavy in the air. Vanessa stared at her for a long moment. "Are you saying you feel threatened, ma'am?" Madeline gave a small shrug. "I'm not saying that, I think it would be better if someone else took this seat." The cabin went still. A hush settled over the passengers. Natalie Parker, seated 3 rows back, angled her phone slightly upward, camera on, pretending to text. Henry scoffed louder this time. "Unbelievable," he muttered. Vanessa's jaw tightened. She shifted her weight, eyes darting between Madeline and Marcus. Marcus remained silent. His calm, unreadable expression never changed. Vanessa inhaled deeply. "Ma'am, I'll say this as clearly as possible. Mr. Reynolds has a valid first-class ticket. He is in his assigned seat. There is no policy, no regulation, and no reason for him to be moved." Madeline's cheeks burned red, but she pressed on. "I'm just asking for an accommodation. If I'm uncomfortable, that should matter." "It does, ma'am," Vanessa replied. "But what you're requesting is not accommodation. It's removal of a paying passenger." "Based on what exactly?" Madeline opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "Exactly," Vanessa continued, voice firmer now. "And let me be very clear. If you continue to escalate this, I will be forced to ask you to deplane." Gasps echoed softly through the cabin. Madeline blinked, stunned. "What, me?" "Yes, ma'am, you." Vanessa's eyes narrowed, her professionalism turning razor sharp. "If you feel unsafe sitting next to a man doing nothing but typing on his laptop, you are free to deplane and make other arrangements." Madeline's chest heaved. She turned, expecting support, but saw only judgment. Faces staring, whispers rising. And then, without a word, Marcus reached into his jacket. The movement was slow, deliberate. He pulled out a leather badge holder and flipped it open. The glint of gold was unmistakable. FBI. The entire cabin gasped. Natalie zoomed in. Cameras clicked. Marcus's voice was calm. "Ma'am, if you feel unsafe, would you like to file an official complaint? I can take your statement right now." Madeline's mouth went dry. Her eyes darted to the badge, then back to his face. The power dynamic shifted completely. Vanessa didn't speak. Henry let out a sharp laugh. Madeline stammered, I no. Marcus nodded once as if he expected that. Good. He closed the badge, tucked it back inside his suit, and resumed typing. And just like that, it was over. For him, but for Madeline, it was only the beginning. I don't feel comfortable, Madeline Brooks said, her voice low but carefully measured. She paused, just long enough to make it clear what she was implying without saying the words outright. I don't want to be difficult, but I think it would be best if someone else took this seat. Her meaning was crystal clear. For the first time, Marcus Reynolds closed his laptop with a soft click. Slowly, he turned his head and looked her directly in the eye. There was no anger, no smirk, just calm, steady observation. And for the first time, Madeline felt something unexpected stir deep in her chest. Uncertainty, but Madeline wasn't backing down. Not yet. In fact, she got louder. A hush settled over the cabin, the weight of her words sinking in as passengers started paying attention. Some leaned slightly toward the aisle, others froze mid-conversation. I don't feel safe, Madeline announced, this time her voice carrying just enough to be heard a few rows back. She didn't need to shout. The words had been chosen carefully, like daggers designed to trigger a response. Vanessa Reynolds, still standing by her side, didn't move right away. Her posture stiffened as she shot a glance toward Marcus, who now sat fully still, hands resting on his closed laptop. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't frowning. He simply stared at Madeline, calm and unreadable. Vanessa exhaled slowly, the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "are you saying you feel threatened?" Madeline tilted her head slightly, giving a small shrug. "I'm not saying that. I just don't feel comfortable, that's all." Across the aisle, Henry Crawford, the businessman with the Bluetooth earpiece, scoffed and muttered, "Unbelievable." A few rows back, Natalie Parker, a young woman dressed smartly in business casual, casually lifted her phone, pretending to scroll, but the camera was clearly rolling now. Whispers rippled through the cabin, heads turned, eyes locked on Madeline, and Madeline noticed. She could feel it, the shift in the air, the tide turning against her, but that only made her double down. "This is a simple request," she continued, feigning politeness. "I'm just asking to be accommodated. If I'm uncomfortable, I should have the right to move seats, shouldn't I?" Vanessa's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I've already checked. There are no open seats available in first class." Madeline pressed her lips together tightly. "And coach?" she asked, voice strained. Vanessa hesitated, then nodded. "There are 2 open seats in economy." Madeline straightened in her seat, a smug smile creeping onto her lips. "Perfect. He can take one of them." The words landed like a bomb. A low ripple of murmurs spread through the cabin. More heads turned. Even Henry put his phone down now, staring openly. Marcus inhaled deeply, his fingers drumming once, just once, on the surface of his laptop before going completely still again. He didn't argue. He didn't respond. But he also wasn't moving. Vanessa blinked, as if replaying Madeline's words in her mind to make sure she heard them right. Slowly, she straightened her shoulders. "Ma'am," her voice was lower now, firmer, the professional warmth gone. "Just to clarify, you're asking me to move this passenger to economy because you don't want to sit next to him?" Madeline nodded once, sitting up straighter. "Yes." Vanessa inhaled sharply through her nose. "That won't be happening." Madeline's head snapped up. "Excuse me?" Vanessa folded her hands in front of her, voice unwavering now. "Mr. Reynolds has a first-class ticket. Just like you. He is in his assigned seat. I cannot and I will not ask him to move." The hush turned into stunned silence. Madeline's face flushed, a deep, burning red. She looked around, searching for an ally, but all she found were cold, judgmental stares. "This is ridiculous," she hissed. "I'm simply asking for the same courtesy anyone else would get if they were uncomfortable." Vanessa didn't flinch. "Ma'am, with respect, what you're asking isn't courtesy, it's discrimination." Gasps echoed through the cabin. Natalie's phone angled higher, now fully recording. Vanessa took a step forward. "And let me be very clear. If you cannot remain seated and follow crew instructions, I will have no choice but to have you deplaned." Madeline's mouth fell open. You'd remove me?" "Yes, ma'am, you." Madeline could barely breathe. The oxygen felt thin. She looked toward Marcus, expecting him to gloat, but he just sat there, calm, collected, as if this entire scene was something he had witnessed 100 times before. Vanessa added, "You may feel uncomfortable, ma'am, but making someone else responsible for that discomfort, especially when they have done nothing wrong, is not something this airline will tolerate." Madeline's lips trembled. "Fine, if he's not moving, then I demand to file a formal complaint." A few people chuckled quietly at the desperation in her voice. Marcus finally moved. Slowly, he reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a slim black leather badge holder. With one smooth motion, he flipped it open. The gleaming gold FBI badge caught the cabin lights, flashing like a warning shot. A collective gasp filled the air. Henry dropped his phone. Natalie zoomed in. Marcus's voice was calm, smooth, deadly polite. "Ma'am, if you'd like to file a complaint, I can take your statement right now." Madeline's eyes locked on the badge, on the letters FBI, and her stomach twisted into knots. Her throat tightened. I, no. "You sure?" Marcus asked, voice still even. "Because once you file it, there's paperwork involved. Investigations. You'd have to explain exactly why you felt unsafe." Madeline shook her head quickly, her entire body trembling. No complaint." Marcus nodded once like he expected that answer all along. "Good." He closed the badge, tucked it away, and went back to his laptop, calm as ever. For him, it was over. For Madeline, the nightmare had only just begun. "He is in his assigned seat," Vanessa Reynolds repeated firmly, her voice unwavering. "I cannot and will not ask him to move." Madeline Brooks felt the blood drain from her face, then rush back in a furious wave of heat. She was losing control fast. And the worst part? Everyone knew it. All around her, passengers were staring openly now. Some whispered behind hands, others shook their heads in disbelief. Across the aisle, Natalie Parker's phone stayed aimed steadily at Madeline, the small red recording light blinking like a silent countdown. Madeline's stomach twisted so hard she felt nauseous. "This is ridiculous," she hissed, her voice brittle with rage. "I am simply asking for the same courtesy that would be extended to anyone else who felt uncomfortable. Is that so hard to understand?" Vanessa didn't budge. Her face was composed, but her eyes burned with quiet fury. "Ma'am, let me be clear. You are asking me to remove a paying passenger from his assigned first-class seat and relocate him to economy for no valid reason. That is not a courtesy. That is not accommodation. That is discrimination." The words hung in the air like a slap. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then someone, a voice from somewhere in the back, let out a low whistle. The sound echoed. Marcus Reynolds still hadn't moved. He sat in silence, gaze locked on Madeline. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't angry. He was just waiting. Madeline's pulse roared in her ears. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She wasn't supposed to be the one cornered. Vanessa squared her shoulders. "Ma'am, we are about to taxi. If you cannot remain seated and follow flight crew instructions, I will have to ask you to deplane." The words hit like a sledgehammer. Madeline's stomach dropped. "What?" she gasped, voice cracking. "You have two options," Vanessa said, her tone professional but sharp as steel. "You stay in your seat, quietly, or you deplane. But Mr. Reynolds is not moving." For a moment, silence swallowed the cabin. Then, soft, polite applause. A few passengers clapped, others chuckled behind their hands. Madeline's cheeks burned hotter than she ever thought possible. This wasn't how it was supposed to work. She was supposed to be in control. She was supposed to be the victim. Instead, she was being humiliated publicly. Madeline opened her mouth, ready to lash out, to scream, to demand. But before she could utter a single word, Marcus moved. Slowly, calmly, he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. The cabin held its breath. With deliberate care, Marcus pulled out a slim black leather case. He flipped it open, and just like that, The entire atmosphere inside the plane shifted. The gleaming gold FBI badge caught the overhead lights, shining like a beacon. Gasps erupted from every direction. Someone in the back cursed under their breath. A few even chuckled, shaking their heads. Natalie's phone zoomed in instantly. Marcus's voice was smooth, controlled, almost bored. "Ma'am," he tilted his head slightly, eyes never leaving Madeline's. "Would you like to file an official complaint? I can take your statement right now." Madeline's breath hitched, her mouth open, but no words came out. She blinked, heart hammering wildly against her ribs. Marcus didn't move. He didn't blink. He just waited. And for the first time, Madeline truly understood she was trapped. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, until it was almost unbearable. His badge glinted under the lights, unmistakable, undeniable. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The gold emblem seared into every witness's memory. It was the kind of thing you couldn't unsee, the kind of revelation that turned an entire room on its head. Passengers who'd whispered moments ago were now staring openly. Some smirked, others just watched, wide-eyed. Madeline's mouth went dry. Her brain scrambled, clawing for an explanation, an excuse, anything to save face. This wasn't supposed to happen. The man she had tried to humiliate, to remove from the plane, the man she implied was a threat, was federal law enforcement. Marcus's gaze remained steady. "Would you like to proceed, ma'am?" His tone was soft, but there was an edge, a razor-sharp warning. Madeline's voice trembled. No." "No?" Marcus asked, as if confirming for the record. "No," she croaked. "Understood." Marcus gave a slight nod, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at his lips. He closed the badge with a soft snap, tucked it back into his jacket, and leaned back casually in his seat. Just like that, it was done. For him. But for Madeline, the nightmare was just beginning. The young woman recording, Natalie, was already typing furiously. Across the aisle, Henry Crawford shook his head with a low chuckle. "Damn, didn't see that coming," he muttered. Vanessa stood straighter, the fight draining from her posture now that the truth was out. She nodded once at Marcus, then turned back to Madeline. "Ma'am," she said quietly, but loud enough for the nearest rows to hear, "I'm going to need confirmation that you will remain seated for the duration of this flight without further incident." Madeline's face flamed, her throat worked, but no sound came. Slowly, stiffly, she nodded. "I'll stay seated," she whispered. Vanessa gave her a cold smile. Excellent choice. She turned, walking away, but not before throwing one last glance at Natalie's recording phone. The damage was done, and Madeline Brooks knew there was no walking this back. She shrank into her seat, eyes darting around the cabin, searching, praying for a sympathetic face. But there were none. Not one. Only judgment. Only condemnation. She tried to swallow past the lump in her throat, but failed. Her fingers trembled as she gripped the armrest. Meanwhile, Marcus? He simply reopened his laptop and went back to work. For him, it was just another Tuesday. For Madeline, it was the beginning of the end. He was federal law enforcement. Madeline Brooks felt the words slam into her like a freight train. Her throat tightened, every breath suddenly sharp and shallow. Across from her, Marcus Reynolds hadn't moved. His expression was unreadable. No smirk, no gloating, just cold, steady calm. He sat with his badge still open in one hand, his sharp gaze locked on hers, waiting. His voice was steady, level, almost clinical. "Would you like to file an official complaint, ma'am?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. The words didn't need volume. They carried the weight of a loaded gun. Madeline's body felt frozen. Heat crept up the back of her neck, flushing her face until it burned. She opened her mouth to speak, But the only sound that escaped was a faint, strangled, I, I. Marcus didn't flinch. He just watched her, waiting. You said you felt uncomfortable, Marcus continued, his tone still polite but laced with a sharp edge. That's a serious allegation, especially on a federal flight. If you believe I've done something inappropriate, I'd be happy to take your statement. Madeline's stomach plummeted. She could feel it happening right there in real time, the shift. Only minutes ago, she'd controlled the narrative. She expected sympathy, expected someone, the crew, a fellow passenger, anyone to jump to her defense. Instead, all she saw now were eyes, watching, waiting. Across the aisle, Henry Crawford chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, this is priceless," he muttered loud enough for half the cabin to hear. From 3 rows back, Natalie Parker's phone zoomed in directly on Madeline's face. Her expression, caught forever, broadcasting the moment the predator realized she'd become the prey. Vanessa Reynolds, the lead flight attendant, stood nearby, arms crossed. Her face was professionally neutral, but her eyes betrayed a quiet understanding. She knew exactly what was happening, and she wasn't about to stop it. Madeline's breath came fast and shallow. Her heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the dull roar of the plane. She stared at Marcus's badge, the gold emblem gleaming under the cabin lights, burning itself into her memory. She couldn't admit she'd lied, couldn't say she'd made it all up just to get rid of him. Not now, not with witnesses, cameras, the world watching, but doubling down. That meant accusing a federal agent of being a threat to a commercial flight. That would have consequences. Madeline's hands trembled in her lap. Her eyes darted around, searching for an out, but none came. Marcus hadn't looked away once. His presence was absolute. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Madeline gave the smallest of shakes, barely a movement. "No," she croaked, her voice breaking. "No complaint." Marcus gave a single nod, like he'd known all along. Slowly, deliberately, he closed the badge, tucked it back into his jacket, and reopened his laptop like none of it had even mattered. For him, it was over. For Madeline, the nightmare had just begun. A few passengers murmured their approval. Somewhere, someone clapped softly. Henry smirked, returning to his newspaper like the show was over. Natalie's fingers flew over her phone screen, typing furiously. The video was already uploading. Madeline could feel her heart pounding so hard it hurt. She sat stiff, staring out the window, wishing, praying she could vanish into the seat. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to rewind time, to take back the last 10 minutes. But there was no undoing this. She had embarrassed herself, publicly, spectacularly, and worse. They'd seen it. They'd recorded it. Her eyes darted desperately around the cabin, searching for a sympathetic face, someone who might throw her a lifeline. But no one met her gaze. Not Henry, not Natalie, not even Vanessa, the one person who had shown her patience at the start. Now even she stood back, arms crossed, silently done with it all. Madeline swallowed hard, but her throat felt like sandpaper. Her hands clenched the armrests, nails biting into the soft leather. The realization hit her like a truck. She wasn't the victim here. Not anymore. And there was no coming back. Marcus typed steadily, his attention back on his screen. He didn't need to look at her. He'd already won, without raising his voice, without a single insult. Just facts, the badge, the truth. The cabin settled, but the tension lingered like smoke after a fire. Madeline's mind raced. Maybe it wouldn't be that bad. Maybe no one outside this plane would ever hear about it. But then, her stomach dropped. Natalie's phone lit up. The words were unmistakable. Uploading, 45%. Madeline's breathing hitched. She had seconds, maybe less, before her humiliation went beyond this cabin and straight into the world's hands. And there was nothing, absolutely nothing she could do to stop it. The worst part? She'd done it to herself. The warmth in Vanessa Reynolds' expression was gone. What remained was cold professionalism, a thin veneer of patience that barely masked her disdain. Madeline Brooks swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed at her to argue, to say something, anything, to claw back control of the situation. But deep down, she knew there was nothing left to say. The flight hadn't even left the ground, and somehow she'd already lost. But this wasn't just embarrassment. Madeline was about to face real consequences. She sat rigidly, staring straight ahead, barely breathing. Her face burned hot, every inch of her skin screaming with humiliation. Across from her, Marcus Reynolds had already moved on. Cool, calm, unbothered. He'd reopened his laptop, fingers tapping effortlessly across the keyboard, his focus entirely elsewhere. It was as if Madeline didn't exist, but the rest of the cabin, they hadn't forgotten. Across the aisle, Henry Crawford, the businessman with the Bluetooth earpiece, smirked quietly to himself. A few rows back, Natalie Parker had stopped typing, but her phone remained angled toward Madeline, camera still rolling, waiting. Even the flight attendants, neutral by duty, carried a different air now. The unspoken judgment in the glances, the stiff postures. Vanessa stood nearby, watching. Madeline felt it all. The weight of the stares, the whispers, the heavy silence screaming louder than words. She had miscalculated, badly. Her fingers twitched in her lap. Her heart hammered in her chest. This wasn't some minor misunderstanding she could laugh off. No forced chuckle or polite wave would fix this. She tried to have a federal agent removed from his seat on camera. The reality hit her hard, settling heavy in her chest like a stone. Her mouth was dry. She couldn't swallow. Finally, Vanessa stepped forward, her voice polite, but stripped of warmth. "Ma'am," she said quietly, careful not to raise her voice, "I need to confirm that you're okay to remain on this flight without further disruption." Madeline stiffened. She could feel the entire cabin listening, passengers glancing sideways while pretending not to. She wanted to snap, to shout why she was the one being treated like the problem. She had only expressed discomfort, but that badge, that gold, gleaming badge, had changed everything. The power she thought she held was gone, swallowed, trapped. Madeline forced her lips into what she hoped passed for a calm expression. I'm fine." Vanessa's gaze lingered, reading her. Then slowly she nodded. "I'm going to hold you to that." Without another word, she turned and walked away. Madeline exhaled shakily, clenching her trembling hands together in her lap. It was over, or so she thought. A sharp chime shattered the uneasy silence. Madeline flinched, her head snapping up, just in time to see Natalie Parker smirking down at her phone and tapping the screen twice. Madeline's stomach clenched violently. She knew that look. She'd seen it on her own grandchildren's faces when they shared a meme or a video meant to go viral. Something designed to spread like wildfire. Her fingers gripped the armrest so tightly her knuckles turned white. Heart pounding, she dared to glance sideways, just enough to catch a glimpse of Natalie's screen. The video was already uploaded. Madeline felt the air knocked clean out of her lungs. Her vision blurred. There it was, her worst nightmare, unfolding in real time. On that screen, her face was frozen mid-sneer. The caption read, "Entitled woman tries to kick a black man out of first class, then finds out he's FBI." The world felt like it tilted beneath her. Natalie grinned and hit another button, share. Madeline's pulse roared in her ears. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She was too late. The damage was done. She sat frozen, unable to speak, unable to move. Every second felt like an hour. Marcus hadn't even flinched. He continued typing as if none of it touched him. But for Madeline, the fallout was just beginning. The air felt thin as Madeline Brooks gasped, struggling to catch her breath. Her eyes locked on the screen in front of Natalie Parker. The caption was simple, Brutal. Racist woman tries to remove black man from first class, then learns he's F by. Madeline's hands went ice cold. The flight hadn't even left the ground, and somehow she had already lost. And if that video was online now, there was no stopping what came next. She turned forward, her breathing shallow. Maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be that bad. Maybe no one would care. Maybe it wouldn't spread. But then, her purse vibrated. Once, twice, a third time. Madeline's chest tightened painfully. She didn't want to look. She didn't want to know. But her hands moved on their own, trembling fingers digging into her designer bag. She pulled out her phone and froze. Her stomach dropped. Text after text lit up her screen. Old friends, acquaintances, even family she hadn't heard from in months. Each message, some version of the same question. Madeline, is this you? Oh my God, I just saw the video. Tell me this isn't real. What the hell did you do? Her heartbeat roared in her ears. With shaking hands, she swiped open her browser and tapped on Twitter. It took less than a second. Her name was already trending. The video had been uploaded less than 5 minutes ago, and it had already racked up over 20,000 views. Madeline's vision blurred as the comments poured in, each one like a punch to the gut. Karma is real. This lady really thought she could get away with it. Can't wait to see her roasted. Instant karma. Madeline's breath caught in her throat. Her world wasn't just collapsing, it was burning. And for the first time, she realized there was no coming back from this. She gripped her phone so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The noise of the cabin faded, drowned out by the sound of her own pulse hammering in her ears. She could barely breathe. The view count ticked higher every time she refreshed. 30,000 views, 42,000, 61,000. It wasn't slowing down. She blinked rapidly, her mind scrambling for a way out, any way to stop this before it was too late. But it was already too late. Desperately, she scrolled through more comments. Imagine being this entitled. LMAO. She really thought she was going to get away with it. The FBI part made my whole damn day. Expose her. We need her name. Madeline's chest tightened so hard it felt like a heart attack. She glanced wildly around the cabin, as if there might be a way to reverse time, undo what had just happened. But nobody was looking at her anymore. They didn't need to. They had seen enough. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her whole body rigid with shame. Her throat burned, her hands trembling as she tried, unsuccessfully, to steady her breathing. Beside her, Marcus Reynolds still hadn't moved. His fingers tapped lightly on his laptop keyboard, calm, unbothered. If he was aware of the video, of the chaos erupting around him, he didn't show it. He didn't care. And somehow, that made it even worse. For Madeline, this was the end of the world. For Marcus, it was just another Tuesday. And somehow, that made it worse. Madeline Brooks' phone buzzed again. She flinched, her breath catching as she glanced down. Her sister. Madeline hesitated, finger hovering over the screen, before pressing decline with a shaky hand. She wasn't ready for that conversation. She wasn't ready for any of this. The plane hadn't even taken off, and yet her world was already collapsing around her. She exhaled sharply, forcing herself to breathe, to think. She needed a plan, a way to fix this. Maybe she could apologize? No, that would only pour gasoline on the fire. Ignore it? Pretend she hadn't seen the video? No, that would be even worse. Her mind raced, thoughts colliding, spiraling until she felt dizzy. And then the pilot's voice broke through the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent into Washington, D.C. Local time is 5:43 p.m. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened as we prepare for landing. Madeline's heart dropped. Landing. She'd been so consumed by the chaos inside the plane, she'd forgotten what was waiting outside. With trembling hands, she refreshed the video one last time. 97,000 views. Her name was still trending. She stuffed the phone deep into her bag, desperate to convince herself there was still a way out, that she could get ahead of this, that maybe it wouldn't be as bad as she feared. Madeline clung to that fragile hope until she turned on the news. The moment the plane's doors opened, Madeline bolted. She ignored the side glances, the quiet chuckles, the waves of judgment rolling off every passenger. She just needed to get out, fast. Her heels clicked sharply against the tile floor as she rushed through Reagan National Airport. And then she saw it. Her pulse skipped. There, just past baggage claim, a small cluster of reporters waited. Not a mob, not yet, but enough. A woman in a navy blazer stood in front of a camera, reading from her phone. The now viral video shows an unidentified woman attempting to have an FBI agent removed from first class, citing discomfort. The clip has gained over 1 million views in just a few hours. Madeline's breath caught in her throat. 1 million? No, that couldn't be. Panic surged. She turned her head, praying they hadn't noticed her. But it was too late. One of the reporters locked eyes with her, face lighting up in recognition. Wait, that's her. Madeline spun on her heel, terror spiking in her chest. She had to get out, now. She moved fast, weaving through the crowd, her heart hammering so loudly it drowned out everything else. Her phone buzzed violently inside her purse. Texts, missed calls, notifications, like a siren chasing her down. There was no outrunning it. Madeline shoved past a group of travelers, her breath short, hands clammy. The world outside that plane was worse than she'd imagined. She barely made it to the curb before the inevitable happened. A sharp voice called out behind her. "Miss Brooks, do you have a response to the video?" Madeline Brooks froze. Her stomach twisted violently. She hadn't even realized her name was out there yet, but it was. She winced, then bolted. A taxi slowed near the curb, and she nearly threw herself into the back seat. "Go," she snapped at the driver. "Now!" The man raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He pulled away from the curb without a word. Madeline pressed her hands hard against her temples, her eyes squeezed shut. Her entire body shook. 1 million views. Her stomach churned. Nausea clawed at her throat. She had built her entire life on careful reputation management, a polished image, a respected name in Westfield society. She served on boards, attended fundraisers, donated to the right causes. She was untouchable. Until now, in a single afternoon, it was gone. Her phone vibrated violently in her lap. She jumped. This time, it was a number she didn't recognize. Madeline stared at it, her pulse pounding, heart hammering against her ribs. The call almost went to voicemail until, at the last second, her trembling hands swiped to answer. "Hello?" There was a beat of silence. Then came a clipped, cold voice. "Miss Brooks, this is James Wilson, chair of the Pine Haven Foundation." Madeline's breath caught. Her mouth went dry. She had served on that board for years, a foundation that prided itself on progressive values, inclusivity, ethical leadership. And she already knew. She knew exactly why he was calling. "James, she started, voice cracking. "We're going to need you to step down," he cut in immediately. No hesitation, no apology. Madeline stared blankly out the window, the city lights of D.C. blurring past her. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Her pulse thundered in her ears. "But this is being taken out of context," she whispered, desperate. I can explain. There's more to it." "The board disagrees," James replied, voice flat. "Final. We'll be issuing a public statement by morning. We expect your resignation by then." And just like that, click, the line went dead. Madeline sat frozen, the phone limp in her hand. Her career was over, her reputation shattered. The worst part? No one cared about her explanation. No one cared what really happened or what she meant to say. They had seen the video, in the video was enough. Madeline let out a shaky, broken breath. She could almost hear the whispers already. That's the woman, the racist, the one who tried to kick an FBI agent off the plane because he was black. This wasn't a rumor. This wasn't something that would quietly fade. It was forever. And worst of all, this wasn't something done to her. This was something she did to herself. There was no fixing it, no carefully crafted statement, no apology big enough. This was the end. Meanwhile, she knew without a shadow of a doubt, Marcus Reynolds hadn't spared her another thought. By now, he was probably in a meeting somewhere in Capital City, calm, collected, utterly unbothered. His life untouched, unaffected. For him, it had been just another Tuesday. For Madeline, it was the day her world came crashing down, and there was no coming back. At the heart of this story lies a powerful and uncomfortable lesson about entitlement, prejudice, and the false sense of control some people believe they hold in certain spaces. Madeline Brooks thought her status, her name, and the comfort of first-class air travel gave her the right to dictate who belonged and who didn't. She assumed she could use coded language, words like, "I don't feel safe," to wield power over someone who had done absolutely nothing wrong except exist in a space she didn't expect him to occupy. But what she didn't count on was that the world has changed. People are watching, recording, and calling out behavior like hers in real time. What once could have been swept under the rug is now exposed for everyone to see. Her attempt to humiliate Marcus Reynolds, a black man who had earned his place just as much as she had, backfired in the worst possible way. In trying to diminish him, she destroyed herself. The irony is that Marcus never needed to raise his voice or cause a scene. All he had to do was show who he truly was, an FBI agent, a man of integrity, a professional. And in that moment, it became painfully clear that skin color had nothing to do with capability or worthiness. The real danger wasn't Marcus. It was Madeline's assumptions and actions. This story is a reminder that respect, decency, and humility matter far more than social status or appearances. No matter how carefully you build your reputation, it only takes one moment, one bad decision, to tear it all down. It's also a lesson about accountability in the digital age. The world is no longer a place where injustice happens quietly. Cameras are rolling, social media is listening, and the truth spreads faster than anyone can control. For people like Madeline, that realization came too late. But for the rest of us, it's a chance to reflect, to check our biases, to treat others with fairness, and to remember that the content of someone's character will always outweigh the color of their skin or the labels society tries to put on them. The next time you feel the urge to judge someone based on what you see instead of what you know, remember this story, because the cost of that judgment might not just be personal embarrassment. It could be your reputation, your career, and everything you've worked so hard to build. Choose wisely. Treat people the way you'd want to be treated. Because in the end, the world is watching, and karma has a way of showing up when you least expect it. If you found this story powerful or thought-provoking, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us out. Share this video with your friends and family, because sometimes stories like this remind us all of the world we're living in. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment down below and tell us what you think about today's story. And if you enjoy real-life stories like this one, with lessons we can all learn from, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.